What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you the first entry in Scumbag Week, and that is a deck in the standard format centered around Umbreon-GX and Hammers. And before I get into the deck, just a reminder that if you guys, well, you can't necessarily like this video. Well, I mean, you can like the video, you just won't like the deck. But if you guys found this deck helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out a lot and lets us do more for you guys. And as for the question of the day, what is the most scumbag deck you think is in the standard format? I know that that is a very kind of cop-outy question because you guys obviously see what deck I think is the most scumbag, but this is just my opinion, so let me know what you guys think is the most scumbag deck in the standard format and why. I will be going through each format, picking the most scumbag deck I can find, and doing a live with it. So yeah, this one is the standard, next one will be expanded, and last one will be the legacy. And before I really get into the deck, I just want to clarify why I am doing an entire Scumbag Week. Because, really, disruption decks and decks that are focused on locking your opponent out of certain aspects of the game have had an undeniable impact on the entirety of the TCGO, with disruption decks even winning Worlds a couple times, even though the only one off the top of my head I can think of is Jason Klaczynski's Hammer Time at Worlds in, I think, 2012 or 2013. I'm not sure. I'm probably completely off, but I do remember that Hammer Time was able to win Worlds, and that was just a lock your opponent out of everything deck. So disruption decks have undeniably had a huge impact in the metagame. And while I do hate them, I really hate playing against them, and actually this week I really do not like playing them necessarily, I would not be doing due diligence to the TCG if I did not do a live, if I did not include them in my repertoire of decks that I show off. So yeah, instead of doing it throughout the year, just having you guys be wondering, okay, when is Sticks going to play a really scumbaggy deck, I'm just trying to relegate it all to 1 week. That way you guys get your fill of scumbag decks, but then the rest of the time you can be like, oh, these are actually fun decks to play against. So yeah, sorry about it, but as a TCG tuber, I feel it is my duty to show all parts of the game. So therefore, I decided to just do a scumbag week, and the deck that I am doing in the standard format, like I said, is around Umbreon-GX and Hammers. And yes, I know in the standard format there are a lot of different decks that can be considered scumbaggy. There's like there's the Houndoom Mill, there's Item Lock with Vileplume. I mean, there's many different decks that are considered scumbag. The reason I think that this deck is the most scumbaggy is because, okay, so Houndoom Mill, if you're able to set up against it, you can just plow through, take your 6 prizes without a problem. Against Vileplume, they lock out both trainers from items. So yes, while it is more devastating to you because their deck is centered more towards playing with an item lock, you still have options that you can go for. The reason I think this deck is the most scumbaggy is because this deck lets your opponent play. I mean, it doesn't keep your opponent from playing items or anything like that. It doesn't lock out anything. It just, during my turn, I'm just going to be like, okay, I see what you've set up. I'm just going to dismantle literally everything from it. So that way you have to start from scratch every single turn, which will inevitably keep you from being able to do much of anything against my deck. So that is why I decided to go with this deck. But again, let me know which deck you guys think in standard is the most scumbaggy and why. But obviously, onto the deck, like I said, centered around Umbreon-GX. And, okay, Strafe and Shadow Bullet are both two very good attacks, and they're going to be attacking, and you're going to be attacks you go for more often than not. Now, I don't want you guys to think that, like, this is just a mill deck. No, the goal of this deck is to take all 6 prizes. However, the manner in which you take the 6 prizes is where the scumbag part comes in. Dark Hall GX, discard 2 energy card from your opponent's Pokemon. That's any 2 energy that they have on the field. You combine that with things like Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer, Team Flare Grunt, and all of a sudden you can just wipe your opponent's board clean of energy to where they really just can't do much of anything, and you're able to consistently take out their only energy through like Enhanced Hammer and Crushing Hammer, that type of thing, to where you can just Shadow Bullet, take your 6 prizes, and not have much resistance from your opponent. So that is the ultimate goal of this deck, with Umbreon just being the main attacker. You use Dark Call early on in the game to eliminate any sort of like max elixir plays your opponent's done, like really just any type of energy acceleration that your opponent had. You just eliminate that, because in the standard format there's really not a lot of discard oriented acceleration except for Carbink Break. Now I will admit this deck has a horrible time against Carbink Break, but that's beside the point. You can still potentially do decently against it with things like Enhanced Hammer and Crushing Hammer, but still, Umbreon, you Dark Call early, eliminate the energy from your opponent's board, and then just use Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer, and Team Flare Grunt to rid the field of all of their energy from there on out, while you just Shadow Bullet for the victory. As for the card we're pairing it with, we're running 2/2 of Yungoos and Gumshoos-GX. Gumshoos for the Search the Premises ability. Once during your turn, you may have your opponent reveal their hand. That pairs greatly with the Energy Hate style of this deck, particularly with Team Skull Grunt, because you look at your opponent's hand and see, oh, they have 2 energy cards in their hand that they can play later. So I'm just going to go ahead and Team Skull Grunt, get rid of that, Shadow Bullet, and make your opponent go through resources. The goal of this deck is to run your opponent out of energy and out of resources to be able to actually just even attack you, to where Shadow Bullet is just able to come through and take the victory. So we're running 4/3 of Eevee and Umbreon, because obviously main attacker, 2/2 of Gumshoos and Yungoos, because those are the guys that sit on the bench, and then 2 Shaymin for obvious draw support. I mean, even Scumbag decks still use Shaymin. As for the items, we have my most hated item of all time, Crushing Hammer. Flip a coin. If heads, discard an energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon. I hate this card. I hate it. I really do. I mean, I think that it is a very... I don't know. I'll go on a rant about Crushing Hammer later, but I really hate Crushing Hammer. However, this deck is centered around Energy Hate. Crushing Hammer is the most splashable Energy Hate card in the entire game, so we're running 4 of those. 2 Enhanced Hammer. I'm actually okay with Enhanced Hammer because it's a guaranteed effect and doesn't always have use, but it has very specific uses, so we're running 2 of those. 1 Escape Rope and 1 Switch, just because, I mean, if your opponent Lysandre's out your Yungoos or Gumshoos, you don't want to have to attach and retreat, so we have Switch and Escape Rope to get those guys out of the active spot. 1 Super Rod to put some stuff back in our deck if we have to, say, like, discard our Umbreons early with a Sycamore or Ultra Ball or something like that. It lets us put them back in our deck. 4 Trainers Mail helps with consistency, just be able to look at the top 4 cards, get whatever card you want. 4 Ultra Ball helps get what you want when you want. 4 VS Seeker reuses your supporters, and as for these supporters, we have the Sycamore N and Lysandre line. I mean, I'm actually running 1 less Sycamore than I usually do, but that's because we have a bunch of disruption cards. Otherwise, 2 N and 2 Lysandre. I mean, that's pretty much standard in all decks that I run, and is actually becoming more standard the more decks that I look at. And now we have the disruption supporters. First of all, you have Delinquent. Now, Delinquent is thrown in a lot of decks, not necessarily because of the disruption aspect. I mean, don't get me wrong, the disruption aspect is very nice, but because you cannot counter Parallel City with Parallel City, so being able to play Delinquent, get rid of your opponent's Parallel City, be able to play down another Pokemon, and then also play your own Parallel City to limit them. That's why Delinquent's there, but also, I mean, the discard 3 cards from your opponent's hand is very, very nice, especially in this deck. 1 Team Skull Grunt, like I said, Energy Hate combined with Gumshoos-GX, and also Team Flare Grunt. Discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. This card is so crucial that we are actually running 2 of them. And I have had turns where I've played an Enhanced Hammer, gone for a Team Flare Grunt, and then went for a Dark Call, and I wiped 4 energy off my opponent's board in 1 turn. I mean, that's just what this deck is capable of doing. I mean, it's basically, yeah, I see what you have set up. I'm not letting you get that set up anymore. I'm just going to discard every energy you have, and I hope you can beat me with 1 energy attack. So, yeah, that's the goal of this deck, and there's actually 2 versions that I'm going to show off. This one's the straightforward Umbreon and Gumshoos version. Oh, by the way, running Poison Barb because your opponent will be attacking with one energy attack, so they will more than likely not be able to one-shot you, meaning that Poison Barb will not only deter them from attacking, but will also mean that if they attack, they're going to be racking up damage on them as well. That really helps out in a lot of situations, particularly against opposing Umbreon, where you will have to, like, you'll be two-shot or three-shotting each other with Shadow Bullet. Poison Barb turns that three-shot into a two-shot, which is huge. And I mean, again, just deters your opponent from attacking, otherwise they will be getting poisoned. But anyway, like I said, this is only one version. This is just a very straightforward Umbreon Gumshoos version. The other version actually involves Radicate, and I really, really like this addition. You see we have a 2-2 of Radicate, and what I did was I got rid of the Poison Barb, I got rid of one, or the two Poison Barbs, I got rid of one of the Team Flare Grunts, and I got rid of one of the Eevees and threw in 2-2 of Rattata and Radicate. This deck is so focused on energy hate that against certain decks, you're going to have all four of their DCEs in the discard pile very, very early, to where Radicate's Shadowy Bite can really put in work. I mean, even just 3 DCEs in the discard pile, all of a sudden Radicate's hitting for 180 damage. And also, Crunch is not a bad attack. Discard an energy attack to your opponent's active Pokemon. Radicate's a 1-prize attacker, and you're really just attacking with 2 prizes. So Radicate can help with the energy hate while also helping out in the prize trade. So yeah, that is why I decided to throw Eradicate in the deck. It makes it a little bit clunkier, but also gives you an extra option for another attacker. So yeah, that is the deck, and I'm going to go ahead and be a scumbag on the ladder. So let's see this deck in action. Alright, we have found one against J Kong. I think it's K-A-U-N-G. I mean, I know that sounds like K-O-N-G, but I'm going with it, J Kong, with a water and normal deck. So we'll see what we're up against. I do get the coin flip wrong, so we do go second. Although that's not the worst thing in the world, because I do have an Eevee with a Darkness Energy in my hand, so that is pretty awesome. Oh, by the way, this is the Radicate version of this deck. I decided to use Radicate first just because I think Radicate is really, really cool. And at the risk of being super scumbaggy, I'm just going to get one solid match with each deck. Obviously, if the matches end within like the first couple turns, that won't count as the match with each version. But as to not be a ridiculous scumbag, I'm only going to do one with each to not pollute the ladder as much as possible. So I do get an extra card. It's not... I mean, it can be kind of useful. We see the Magma Secret Base and the Remoraid. So, I mean, considering this is water, you usually see Magma Secret Base with Gyarados, but you usually don't see Remoraid in that deck. So, I'm interested to see what my opponent is running. I mean, even the Buddy... Okay, so this is Gyarados. It just happens to have Remoraid in the process. This is going to actually be a phenomenal matchup for us because of Enhanced Hammer and also Shadow Bullet being able to knock out Magikarps on the bench in the process. And eventually, like, I'm just going to run my opponent out of resources. I'll be able to just snipe down Magikarps to the point where I'll take my 6 prizes, or he runs out of ways to recycle them. Enhanced Hammers will be getting rid of the DCEs, so my opponent will just have to have a ridiculous amount of ways to recycle resources from the discard pile, which I think will just work in our favor enough to where we'll be able to win this match. So I'm really not worried at all about this matchup at all. I think it is very, very, very heavily in our favor. My opponent does get a couple Magikarps down with damage on them, so that's pretty nice for them. I do draw into an Umbreon, so what I think I'm going to immediately do is Ultra Ball, get rid of the Switch and the Sycamore, just because I think I'm going to go ahead. I think I might Delinquent this turn. Okay, 2 Rattata and the Radicate are in the deck. I'm going to go ahead and grab that Shaymin. Let's get the Darkness Energy onto the Eevee, evolve immediately into an Umbreon. That way I have a Strafe on board later, and then I'm just going to go ahead and Delinquent and get one more thing my opponent has to get in play in order for his Gyarados to be able to get powered up fully and potentially one-shot. Well, I guess he won't even... Will he be able to? Yeah, he'll have to have 3 Magikarps on board with 20 damage on each in order to one-shot an Umbreon. Right now he only has 2, and one of those is going to be evolving into Gyarados, so I'm just going to make it that much harder for my opponent to get all the resources he needs by getting rid of the Magma Seeker base. Unfortunately, I do not get a Rattata, because Radicate might actually be very clutch in this matchup, because I'll be able to get rid of so many DCEs, and it will be a 1-prize attacker as opposed to a 2-prize in Umbreon. And honestly, at this point, I'm in a great position. I have an Umbreon active. I have a Yungoos on the bench to where if I can get a Gumshoos, I'll be able to start looking at my opponent's hand. My opponent even has to burn a double puzzle on an Octillery and a Level Ball. That's amazing for me. I mean, I honestly do not think there is a way that we can lose this matchup at this point, just because I've already made my opponent go through so many resources. I've made him burn one of the ways that he's able to get stuff out of the discard pile. We do see another Magma Secret base, so I very well might Delinquent that again, just to cause that to be even more of a problem for my opponent. My opponent does Dive Ball, so he does have a Dive Ball, so he will be able to get another Magikarp up. The thing is, I have a Lysandre in my hand. I'm going to be able to knock out 2 Magikarps this turn alone. And yeah, we do see the teammates, but I mean, honestly, the fact that I drew into Lysandre so early and Shadow Bullet, I mean, bench damage just destroys Magikarp. It just destroys Gyarados, which is why you see a lot of them running the Mr. Mime with the bench barrier. But clearly my opponent doesn't run it because we just saw water and normal in the deck. So what I am going to do, immediately play the DCE onto my Umbreon, and then gonna Lysandre in a Magikarp with damage on it. I think, yeah, just because the damage on the Magikarp is what powers up the Gyarados. If I get rid of the Magikarp with damage on it, then Gyarados' full retaliation will not be able to do nearly enough to be able to actually damage me significantly to the point of allowing my opponent to win. So that is what I'm going to go for. I draw into Eradicate. Wish I had a Rattata down. I mean, I can Ultra Ball for it later if I want. But what I think I'm going to do is probably Ultra Ball for another Eevee, and then just play that down so I can have another Umbreon up in the background. My opponent does evolve into Gyarados. That's fine with me. Even if he plays down another Magikarp, what I can do is Lysandre up the Octillery, take out his draw power, and also snipe down another Magikarp on the bench. Because I know this sounds weird, but really, Gyarados is the last thing you want to attack. Against this deck, the Gyarados is the last thing you want to attack. You want to take out Magikarps as quickly as possible. My opponent will be able to get another Magikarp down. He does have a teammates in his hand to get another one as well. So he'll probably just grab a Magikarp and something else, I would think. But either way, I mean, we're in a great position. We're already 2 prizes ahead. I have another way of getting a Lysandre in my hand. I can just bring up the Octillery, take out his Abyssal Hand, while also sniping out the Magikarp on the bench. I guess my opponent already played the teammates anyway. But either way, Gyarados will be able to full retaliate, hit me for a whopping 90 damage. That's not a big deal at all because, okay, yeah, what I could have done right there is Ultra Balled for an Eevee, gotten rid of the N and the Radicate. To grab that Eevee, play the DCE down onto it, Lysandre up the Octillery like I was saying, and then snipe the Magikarp on the bench, take 2 more prizes, and then, I mean, like, that was... And then even potentially Crushing Hammer away the DCE to where my opponent would just have to get so many more resources in order to be able to win the game. So, yeah, that was... I'm going to count that as the first match because it showed off what this deck does. Unfortunately, Radicate didn't get to do much. However, Radicate does particularly well against decks like Giratina, where there's DCEs and Double Dragons in play. So, yeah, that was the first match with the Radicate version. Let's go ahead and just see the Gumshoos Umbreon version of Umbreon-GX Hammers. Alrighty, we have found another one against Eki Senpai with a Dark and Psychic deck. So, be interested to see what we're up against. Might be an Yveltal Garbodor. Looks like another person chooses the Tails Never Fails route. But it is, I mean, it never fails except when it does. We do have to mulligan, so unfortunately we are going to be giving our opponent another card. Which, Bit unfortunate, especially because they're going first and there's no way we can end them out of it. And we're giving them 2 cards. Okay. Can we go for 3? Do we get 3? No, we don't. Okay, we actually start with an Eevee. So, this hand isn't bad. I would have liked to have gotten a Dark Energy as opposed to a DCE, but I mean, I guess a DCE works because I can potentially draw a card if I need to. Okay, never mind. So DCE is potentially going to be fine because we do see the Wobbuffet start, so I won't be able to evolve anyway. Even my opponent gets a Floatstone onto it, so that 2 retreat cost will not be a big deal. What I might do is Lysandre in something my opponent gets, and then Ultra Ball for a Shaymin, potentially. My opponent just has to discard a ton of stuff. What is he running? Okay, so it's a Wobbuffet Eeveelutions deck. That's really cool. It is confirmed. You do see the Eevee come down with a DCE. So what I am probably going to do is... Ooh, Parallel City even. So, let's first... let's Trainers Mail, see if I can get something else via Seeker. Hey, you know what? That works. That's fine. Let's go ahead and Ultra Ball. Get rid of the... Okay. How do I want to play this? Because I'm definitely going to get rid of the Team Flare Grunt. But you know what? I think I'm going to just do the Lysandre play like I was talking about. There's 2 Gumshoos and Yungoos in the deck. That's fine. Play the DCE onto the Shaymin. I want to get... Or not onto the Shaymin, onto the... Hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and Parallel City. Put my opponent down to 3. Lysandre up the Eevee. That way I can potentially draw into a Darkness Energy. That's what I want. I don't want to have to play the DCE. I want a Dark. That way I can go ahead and potentially evolve my Eevee. And it doesn't pay off. So let's go ahead and just play down a bunch of Eevees and a Yungoos. Quick draw. Do I want to go for it? You know what? Screw it. We're going for it. Let's see if we can quick draw. Get a extra card. We do not. So, probably just wasted a DCE right there. Because my opponent will probably be able to just Darkness up into an Umbreon, or even just Umbreon into an Umbreon, and get the Darkness Energy. So, completely unnecessary risk on my part. That was definitely a dumb play. And I'm going to get punished for it. But, I mean, I still have an Eevee down. I have a Yungoos down. I have another Eevee down. So, I should be able to at least strafe, potentially. Well, I mean, at least that's what I'm hoping for. My opponent does Hex Maniac. That's actually fine, because even though I won't be able to search out anything, I won't be able to search out an Eevee or anything like that through a Darkness Energy, a Sycamore should be able to give me a hand where I'm able to get an Umbreon. And I draw an Ultra Ball. Wow, that is one of the last things I want to draw right now. Because, I mean, now I just get rid of a method of searching out an Umbreon. Luckily, I do draw into one, so that works too. But let's... Okay. See, the thing is, I have so much in my hand that I want to play. But what I'm going to do is get rid of the Yungoos and... Let's see. Let's go ahead and actually get rid of the Trainers Mail. Because, I mean, the Trainers Mail gets me resources. It isn't necessarily a resource in itself. And I can use everything else that's in my hand. Let's go ahead and... Crushing Hammer. Beautiful. Let's get rid of that DCE off of my opponent's Umbreon. Play the Umbreon down. Play the Poison Barb onto it. That way I can start racking up damage when my opponent has to attack me. And then strafe. I don't want to switch into anything. Just hit that Umbreon for 30. Set it up to be knocked out by 2 Shadow Bullets following. And yeah, we're actually in an okay spot despite our start and my stupidity with trying to go for the with the draw card off of Eevee, even though I was going to lose a DCE off of that anyway, and I risked it on a coin flip. So, like I said, 100% my fault. Totally unnecessary play to go for. My opponent does get rid of my Parallel City, so I mean that's actually okay with me. I really don't care. I just wanted to limit my opponent's options early on. However, with the amount of Pokemon they had, it doesn't seem like they really had those options to begin with. And my opponent... What's nice is my opponent is probably just going to Shadow Bullet. Dark Calling right now would be kind of a waste because you wouldn't be able to get rid of 2 energy. You'd only be able to get rid of 1, which is essentially just 1 free turn as opposed to 2 turns of attachment. So that's really nice. What I am going to do is immediately play the Darkness onto my Umbreon because I think I'm just going to go for the Dark Call this turn. I mean, I have the poison racking up because of Poison Barb, so that works fine for me. I even get a potential Team Flare Grunt for next turn, so I mean, I'm just being a complete scumbag at this point. Let's Poison Barb up my other Umbreon. Trainers Mail, see if I can get like a Draw Support or something. I get an Enhanced Hammer. So that's actually really, really nice. And what we're going to do at this point is we're just going to play the 100% energy denial game, and you're going to see why this is my choice for the Scumbag deck. Because Dark Call is able to get rid of 2 turns of attachments right there. Crushing Hammer was able to get rid of 1 more. And, I mean, I'm the first person to complain about Crushing Hammer. I hate that card. It caused me to go into unnecessary rage, as all of you guys have heard. But, I mean, at this point, if you're going to go Scumbag, at least go all out. That's just my opinion. We do get a Team Skull Grunt. That would be nice if I had a Gumshoos. That'd be really, really nice if I had a Gumshoos. But, unfortunately, I do not right now. I do have a Crushing Hammer, though. So I can start being extra scumbaggy. I can Team Flare Grunt. I can... Wow, I'm a horrible, horrible person. Because I can't even just start Shadow Bulleting because Dark Call has already done the damage that it needs. And now I have enough of a setup to where I can just start playing the ridiculous energy denial game. I mean, I don't even have to do much of anything at all apart from just be like, okay, every single turn, you got 1 energy on the board, now you don't. So, that's really nice for me. My opponent is just going to search out an Espeon, probably get that thing going, because that can actually start... Ooh, my opponent doesn't even have an energy this turn. Just switching into the Wobbuffet and then passing. So, that works. Let's see if I can get an Ultra Ball off of my Trainer's Mail to get a Gumshoos. No, I get an Enhanced Hammer. Hey, you know what? That works. More hammers you have, the more fun you get to have. And then I'm going to play the Darkness Energy onto the Umbreon. And then, well, do I want to play it? I could just strafe, but I think what I'm going to do is attach and then Shadow Bullet to set up for a knockout. I have a Team Flare Grunt. I've already used all my Trainer's Mails. I could Lysandre in my opponent's Umbreon. But I think at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and Shadow Bullet. Yeah, let's Shadow Bullet. Set the Wobbuffet up to be knocked out by a Shadow Bullet next turn, and then hit my opponent's Umbreon-GX, set it up to... Hey, no, that's already set up for 2 Shadow Bullets anyway. Let's set up the Eevee to be knocked out with... We'll set up the Espeon that I know my opponent has in his hand to be knocked out by 2 Shadow Bullets later, because the Umbreon's already set up. An extra 30 damage isn't really going to do much of anything. My opponent does play Darkness Energy onto his Umbreon. He will be able to strafe. However, I do have a Crushing Hammer that I can potentially get rid of that Darkness Energy with. I will probably just Lysandre up my opponent's Umbreon and then go start Shadow Bulleting that, play the DCE onto my Umbreon on the bench. That way I have a backup Shadow Bullet. And yeah, it gets an extra 40 damage on me. Not a big deal. I even get another DCE. Do I get heads on the Crushing Hammer? I do not. It serves me right for playing Crushing Hammer anyway. But let's just go ahead and DCE. Okay, please DCE up the Umbreon. Don't... Showdown, don't do this to me. Don't kick me out. I know I'm a scumbag for playing this deck, but come on. Okay, there we go. That's fine. Let's go ahead and I think just Lysandre up the Umbreon to Shadow Bullet it. Get it set up for a knockout next turn. Because my opponent can just strafe again, but it's really wouldn't do much. I mean, it wouldn't knock me out. I mean, that's exactly what I'm going for. A Shadow Bullet or a strafe would not be able to knock me out. A Shadow Bullet would. I even get a Darkness Energy for another Shadow Bullet potentially later. Let's see what my opponent does. Because I'm probably just going to switch into my Umbreon-GX on the bench. Even if my opponent knocks out this Umbreon with Shadow Bullet, I can immediately just Darkness up my Umbreon that's on the bench and then Shadow Bullet again. Really, I mean, okay, my opponent Lysandre's up the Shaymin. Okay, that actually makes sense because he can Shadow Bullet that thing up later. Let's go ahead and switch into my Umbreon that has no more damage on it. Crushing Hammer, see if I can get rid of the Darkness Energy, which I do. And now my opponent just has 2 Evolutions that are just taking a ton of damage. That Umbreon is going to get knocked out by another Shadow Bullet later. My opponent top decks an N. That is very unfortunate. Very good top deck, but, I mean, that stinks for me. even though I do... Okay, we see the Enhanced Hammer. That's fine. I should be able to Sycamore into it. And we do see the DCE. So my opponent is probably just gonna... Oh, just passes. Okay. Well, unlucky for him, I am just going to DCE up my Umbreon because I don't know why he attached to the Espeon because all I needed was a DCE to be able to knock out my opponent's Umbreon and take 4 prizes this turn. But I will be able to Delinquent, get rid of my opponent's hand. Yeah, he had a Sycamore and an Ultra Ball. Let's just Shadow Bullet, save the Crushing Hammer for later because I'm going to be getting rid of that energy by knocking out the Espeon-GX anyway. And then take a 4-prize turn, knocking out that Umbreon on the bench. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to use the combination of Team Skull Grunt and Gumshoos yet. I do have an Ultra Ball, so if my opponent survives this turn, I will be able to go into a Gumshoos. And okay, he is just going to Energy Evolution up into an Espeon, so I will probably be able to get that Gumshoos into play. Or not. I guess my opponent's other Espeon was prized, meaning that we are going to win the game this, well, if we had gone into the next turn, because I would have been able to Shadow Bullet the Espeon. My opponent clearly had nothing else. Delinquent, Energy Hate, I mean, that deck just worked perfectly, and as much as I hate these decks, I need to acknowledge how impactful and how successful they are at high-level competition. So, I mean, I hate them. I will be the first one to acknowledge that. I go into a very unnecessary amount of rage when I play against them, particularly decks that run Crushing Hammer. I'm sorry. That's just me. I hate playing those types of decks, but I did want to acknowledge their success and impact on the game, so that's why I decided to just devote an entire week to them. That way you guys really don't have to worry about me spamming these on the ladder at any other point. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as you could. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.